Hi everyone, I'm Brittany Powers and this is my Module 1 assignment for EDL 859. So first let's take a look at my personal demographics. So I added a photo of myself, my dog Archie, and my husband Bob. Here's a photo of my husband and I here, and then our dog on this side as well. My husband and I have been married for 6 years this past June. We don't have any kids yet, so our dog is basically like our only child at this point. For my professional life, I work in the Blue Valley School District in the Overland Park area, but I'm in the south part of Overland Park near a city called Stillwell, and my school is called Wolf Springs Elementary. This is my second year of teaching, and I am teaching first grade. Next, let's move on to where public schools receive their support. First, let's take a look at the support those public schools receive from local areas. So, state governments commonly delegate responsibility and for the accountability and operation of government-run schools, so public schools, to the local bodies. So most of the responsibility and general operation comes from the district itself. School board officials are the ones who kind of like set the vision for the district and are the ones behind decisions that are made. And school board officials are elected and appointed by community leaders. And actually I found the stat that 96% of school boards are elected by popular vote within communities. School boards collect money from property taxes on all the homes and businesses in the area, and then that money goes directly to the public schools and whatever needs they have. That does account for about half of the funds that schools need throughout the year. But then whatever funding is left that schools have need of, that goes to the school board, and they have to find that money or raise that money from the community to make sure that schools are taken care of. So for example, if the federal government gave 10% of the funds that schools needed in that district, and the state gave 40% of the funds that were needed, the board would be responsible for finding that other 50. Next, let's take a look at the support public schools receive from the state. State governments often choose to delegate much of their authority to those local school districts, just as the federal government does. But they can reclaim that authority if a need arises. So if a school is not performing well, or if there are a lot of problems within a district, or if the state board just kind of is noticing that things aren't going well in a general area, then they might step in and kind of take some authority back. But for the most part, they like to delegate that authority to districts because districts are going to be aware of their own needs more than anybody else is. The state also sets benchmarks and standards, so most of the states in the United States have adopted Common Core. But that is the decision of the state whether or not they would like to adopt Common Core or create their own. They are responsible for creating standards, though, for reading and math primarily, and then the secondary standards would be science, social studies, art, and then foreign languages. States also provide for slightly less than half of schools' operating costs. So again, states give about half of the funds needed for a school. Federal government will give a little bit, and then whatever is left does go to the Board of Education. For the funds that come from the state, that's drawn from income, sales tax, and state lotteries. Last, let's take a look at the support public schools receive from federal government. So they do contribute a much smaller amount of money to schools, and their contribution is around 8% only. The Education Department seeks to meet critical national needs. So really they're kind of looking at the big overarching themes. They're trying to identify what challenges schools are facing in general and kind of raise awareness of that across the country and in communities. The Department of Education's original and lasting purpose was to simply share information to help states support their schools and to help, of course, families to get involved and also add support. The Department of Education acts as a cabinet level agency at this point, and they offer support to elementary and secondary schools and also post-secondary students, so like college students, in ways such as offering grants and loans. Their involvement is limited by the 10th Amendment, which kind of draws a line and delegates most of the authority and decision making over to the state. The intention was to kind of keep the federal government from controlling all the decisions that were made within schools. Because of that, we don't see as much funding from the government, but when there is funding offered or extended to schools, a lot of times there are strings attached, and you have to follow whatever guidelines the federal government has put out. So the federal government does issue policies and programs, some big ones being No Child Left Behind, and they can't enforce those. But if the schools do decide to receive the grants that the federal government is offering to them, then they are also choosing to adopt whatever policies the federal government has put out. Last, the federal government really fights for equity, and a lot of their programs, whether or not they've been successful, were intended to support the fight for equity. Next, we're going to transition to the people kind of behind all of that, the people who are governing each of those three branches of education government. So first is federal, and there are two big entities that control the federal education government, and the first is the Department of Education, and the staff on the Department of Education hasn't really grown throughout the years, and they are all paid. Their main position and responsibility is to advocate for high needs across the country. Like I mentioned a few moments ago, they put out initiatives and offer funding to primary, secondary schools, and then college students. They really act to inform the public and teachers as well to support everyone. Next, the Congress. While the Congress isn't directly a leader within education, they do pass bills and regulations that very much directly affect schools and education. And oftentimes, if schools receive funding from the Department of Education, they are obligated to follow whatever bills or regulations the Congress has passed. Next, leaders within the state would first and foremost be the State Board of Education, which is composed of 10 paid members. Those are appointed, and each member is a resident of a different county within that state, so that they're able to really be a voice for the needs of their specific county and city and area. The position and job of the state board members are to supervise public schools primarily. They're also involved in monitoring funding and state programs and helping manage those, kind of make sure they're being implemented properly and that districts are managing those well enough on their own. And then last, the leadership that happens in local government would first be the superintendent. In my district, Blue Valley, our superintendent is Tanya Merrigan, and she is paid well. Her position and her responsibilities include being a major decision maker for the district and on behalf of schools in the district and students. She also manages the leaders, so like the principals within the district, and she helps manage our district resources, so where money's going and what resources are being purchased. She also is the main person who helps implement the school board's vision. So, mentioning the school board, I'm going to move right down. The next group of leaders within local school government would be the Board of Education. In my local community, Blue Valley, our Board of Education is composed of 7 members. All 7 of these members are operating on a volunteer basis, and none of them are paid. And the roles of the Board of Education would be to set goals and give direction for the district. The Board of Education also manages the finances. They appoint and evaluate the superintendent, make sure they're doing their job correctly and efficiently. And then as a whole, they just kind of look at the district and make sure the district is progressing towards whatever those goals they set for the district and making sure that they are progressing towards the district's vision. If I'm trying to think about which level has the most power and control over public education, it really would just depend on the district, I think. But as I'm thinking about my own personal experience, I would say it has to be the local government. For example, the state of Kansas kind of just changed the way they're having teachers teach reading, and that's a big deal. They really want to move teachers into teaching reading and literacy in a very structured phonics approach. But my district adopted a specific curriculum of choice that they want teachers to start using. And so while the state might make a statement about generally what they want teachers to do, my local government adopts a curriculum and says you have to teach this. And so that's really affecting my day-to-day practice in a major way. So because of that, I would say that local government has the most practical impact on public education. But really, you could argue for state or federal being the most impactful because in various ways they do make a big difference in a teacher's experience and a student's experience. Okay, next, let's take a look at the first standard identified for this module. To evaluate, develop, and implement management, communication, technology, school-level governance, and operation systems that support each student's learning needs and promote the mission and vision of the school. I believe that this standard is most impacted by the local government because just as I was mentioning before, local government will be the one to make those really specific choices on what happens within school buildings. So a state might give general direction, but a local government is going to say, hey, this is exactly how we want this to be implemented and executed and carried out within classrooms. Next standard that was identified for this module will be to evaluate, develop, and advocate for a data-informed and equitable resourcing plan that supports school improvement and student development. So this really made me think of the equity aspect that is so missing in our country, and the level of government that I felt like targeted this area the most was the federal government, just with their initiatives to provide equity and provide funding for low-performing schools and high-need areas. Last, standard CLO 6.3 says reflectively evaluate, communicate about, and implement laws, rights, policies and regulations to promote student and adult success and well-being.